sometimes pushing out of the house.
Okay, I got it working now, thank you. So anyway, it's like what Kara was saying about my insights and stuff like that. To be honest with you, there are times where I have doubted myself, believe it or not. You find that amusing, don't you?
That you would never have a doubt in your life?
Yeah. Most people, a lot of people think that I don't, you know. But here's the bottom line: is that we began to think a lot more about it, and you know. So, like for today, for those of you who are following the today's meditation thing, the quote was from Wayne Dyer. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's real easy to get caught up on all the negative, all the stuff that goes wrong in your life, all the shit basically. But that's what we learn from. And when I start to think like, what gives me the right to tell anyone, or to I can't tell anybody. I can't tell anyone what to do or what not to do. It's not my place. Actually, it's no one's place when you get down to it. But I have a unique perspective on life, and I used to think it's because of all the things that I did, and thinking like all the things I did right, but that's not it. It's all the stuff that I've done wrong. It's like I can't think of an area in my life where I haven't done something monumentally wrong. Really, you know, in terms of health, I've had some major health issues. Relationships. I've had some major relationship issues. I've had tons of financial issues, business issues. Whatever could go wrong, I've had something go wrong in every area of my life. But the thing is that I'm still here. And sometimes I figured out what to do. In some of it, I'm still figuring out what to do. But it's the experience, and it's the experience of screwing up. And I think that may end up being the title of my next book is the successes of a failure. I'm just joking, because I'm not a failure, because you're not defined by your circumstances. You're not defined by those things. It's just understanding that if I look at the action, if I look at what's going on, if I look at the results of specific things, it'd be very easy, if I'm just looking at the outcome of that specific instance, to say, yeah, I'm pretty much a screw up. Or I can look at it as, no, I'm somebody who's completely devoted to learning. And the only way we learn is through trying stuff, and experimenting, pushing boundaries, and ultimately failing. Because if we didn't fail at something, then there's no reason to learn. So if learning is those of you who remember when we talked about the things that are your priorities in life, your core values. My number one core value is learning. And so learning, and this is kind of like one of those epiphany moments for me, was going, wow, if I say and I believe that my reason for being is to learn, and I don't make mistakes and I don't fail and I don't screw up, then I'm never really going to fully maximize my potential to work. Because that's what it means. So it's embracing the fact that I am a screw up. So, but when we think about how this group works and why it's going to work and how it's going to work and when it's going to work and all sort of stuff, it's so easy when we're in a group to feel insecure, particularly when there's something that we don't know, or we know that we're not particularly good at, that we've tried, that we failed, that we haven't gotten the results we're looking for. Because I'm going to try and redefine that word failure. We've talked about the power of transformational language. Because as soon as you say fail, what's the emotional response you get to fail?
Well, it's a negative.
It's a negative. It's like, you failed the test. It brings back all these negative emotions. So if we redefined it as something that's more neutral, in that the outcome that you got was not what you anticipated. Yeah, that's a little more neutral. But we get so caught up in the emotional part of failure, thinking that it's bad, that we don't allow ourselves to be honest and to say, oh, this is an area that I can learn, which is different. This is like the Wayne Dyer thing. You change the way you look at things. You can look at it as I don't know, and what does I don't know? How does that make you feel? I don't know that.
Makes you feel stupid.
Yeah.
Everybody else knows it.
Yeah. Or you can say, oh, here's an opportunity for me to learn. Here's something that I have an opportunity to learn more about. That makes you feel.
There's a positive connotation. There's the assumption that you will learn it.
Yeah.
It can also mean honesty when you realize and you face the fact that you don't know. You're being honest with yourself.
Allergies.
And then you can decide which way you want to go. Is it okay that you don't know it? And can you live with that for a while? Or do you want to find out more?
Yeah. But I mean, it's that power of words thing. And I think that's probably the thing that's going to be the one of the overarching themes of the year, is that the changing the self-talk, because because when you read a book, I mean, what are you reading? You're reading words, and words are just ways of expressing ideas, and the words we use have a lot of power. So
I have a real concern about words disappearing from
LOL.
the population of people
SMH.
younger than me, which is not most everybody, but gosh, it scares me because it just doesn't seem important anymore to know words.
It's because you're old. I'm just kidding. You're not old enough. You're not old enough. Because if you go back
I never
far
want to
enough,
be old enough.
if you go back far enough,
Symbols,
yeah.
writings on a wall.
Yeah, and that's like, I remember seeing a
True.
meme, showing like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and emojis, and saying, we've reverted back. Yeah, and
That's true. I wasn't thinking that ancient. I was
and that's the thing, is that, and I think this is where, what I'm proposing to you guys about how we move forward with this group is technology has changed the game. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's made it better or made it worse. It just made it what it is. And we either have to embrace it fully, we shun it, or we see it for what it is, try to maximize the benefits that it has and mitigate the weaknesses that it has. You know, create the change from the inside. So, I think words have power, but the power is not in the word. There's the two sides of the word. Where does the word come from?
It's generated from your brain.
It's generated from your thoughts, your thoughts, your intentions, your emotions. Okay, so that's the first half of it. Okay, what's the second half of it? That influence, that's the great influence, but ultimately it's not so much culture shapes it, but it's your interpretation.
And what you mean by it.
Yeah,
Intention.
it's like, it's what I mean by it as saying it, and what you think I mean by it when you hear it. There's this comic that I got turned on to recently. His name is Ismo. He's from, I think, Finland. And so he learned English in his native language, but it's not his native tongue. And he does this, he has two big bits that are like, you know, have gone viral and stuff. And they're on, the first one is about the word ass. He says that the word ass is like the most hard to understand word in the English language. Because he said, I thought I know what ass was. Ass is your backside. He said, but I come to the United States and no. Ass just doesn't mean ass. Ass means so many different things. And he goes through this whole spiel, you know, it's a very funny bit. You know, like, you know, it's like saying how, you know, it's been a long ass day. You put the word ass in, long ass means it's been a long day. And he kind of goes on that about how it's just like, you know, you throw it in and it just doesn't really mean anything. But then how also it can change the context of stuff. So, you know, if you say someone's a badass,
It's a good thing.
yeah, you know, and it's like, you know, in portions of ass, it's like, you know, if you're a total ass, you're an idiot, right? If you're a half ass, that means, he said, but if you're a piece of ass, so, you know, so it's not the word.
Yeah.
It starts with what's your intention when you're saying that word, and then how it's interpreted by the other person. So, like in the context of doing something like this, a leadership, a mentoring group, because I want to change the name of, you know, because it's more from what I originally created this to be. When we think about connection and interaction, for so long, it was you had to be in the same room. You know, you have to be in the same room to do this. And then, you know, this was way before technology. And then technology comes along and then you're still like, well, but yeah, you
Oh, it's actually yours. This is a problem.
that's the
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have soup. Oh,
Pear and
yeah.
blue and soup.
Yeah, thanks.
The soup's coming right now. There you go.
Before we move forward,
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to put a word in the Lord Carl. He had a
Thank you.
big
Absolutely.
word.
Oh,
Right.
I
And
love.
it came from his
Can I
heart.
get you anything before you get started?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh,
All right.
Can I have a refill on the tea?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
George Carlin is the
Yeah,
master.
yeah, I absolutely.
I heard him talk about how his mother really encouraged him to look upward. I wish I could remember, but I just really like him so much.
Well, I guess I want to revise what I was saying, in that my fear is people are losing the curiosity to find out about all the words that can stand for the same thing. You know,
Well, I think.
good old synonyms.
Yeah. It's the ability to express.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, as, you know, over the years, like the dictionary has changed, you know, words are added, words are deleted. You know, if a word is no longer part, I mean, yeah, you know, certainly you want to catalog archaic words so that you're reading something, you know, written from the 15th century, that you at least know what that word is supposed to mean, but they have to add new words because contexts have changed, or new ways of expressing concepts have changed. And we,
I brought a second one.
Just in case. Did you bring me another two bags?
Absolutely.
we so often want to get caught up in, and it's not, for most of us, it's not a conscious decision. But this is the way it was when I was brought up. I was a kid, I was a teacher, I was this, I was that. I was a nurse, I was, you know, when I was a nurse, we didn't do things this way. You know, we did our charts by hand, we didn't use computers. Well, you know, as things change, things have to change. So, the way we approach things have to change.
I didn't know if you wanted the same one or not, so
I
probably.
have that chocolate one.
That one? Still haven't found that.
See, this is the next one. Thank you.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
Thanks.
So it's the, you know, how do you express what it is you want to express? So if we go into like what Deutsch talks about in The Brain That Changes Itself, the concept of plasticity, you know, if we don't allow ourselves the ability to approach something from a different perspective, you know, the brain is plastic, but we tend to not want it to be plastic. You know, we want to hold on. You know, this is the idea, this is the way we're going to do it. But as we start to have new experiences and new environments and all the other new, it requires us to create new ways of expressing the same concepts. And that's where it gets really, really interesting, intriguing.
And the fact that things are so different now because the center is closed, actually I was just reading this morning, that when you get beyond the critical periods of plasticity in youth, and you get into adults with plastic brains, it usually takes a dramatic event, it takes something very different to happen to open up the opportunity for plasticity. And so, like with the center changing and everything is different, this actually would open up an opportunity for people to think about things differently.
Like for me, I have for years thought there's no way I can ever teach Tai Chi or Qigong online because it's something you gotta do. You know, I've gotta be able to, you know, touch someone. I've gotta be able to do this. You know, and then I started to think like, well, you know, people have been teaching movement virtually for decades. Go back to Jack LaLanne. You know, Jane Fonda, you know, Dancercise, you know, all these different things, you know, that have been taught virtually for decades. And you know, then it's like, well, I can't have this kind of mentoring group without being there like one-on-one, face-to-face. The closest, again, it's been done for as long as there's been the technology, it's been done. So the closest example I can give to this, and excuse me if it offends you, is, see, Betty's already offended. In terms of like religion. You know? So think about, you know, how many people watched Billy Graham, or Oral Roberts, or, you know, the 700 Club, or PTL Club, any of these, you know, really, really major, huge, how many people watch Joel Osteen today? All right, so all these people that are fundamentally getting the teachings, getting the information virtually, but still they feel connected. And this was the eye opener to me, was to think about, you know, for years it was like we can only be connected if we're in the same room. But when we start thinking about like grander concepts, more spiritual concepts, more cosmic concepts, thinking about things like string theory, and you know, that we don't have to be in the same room.
You don't have to be limited by the room.
Yeah. What's important is that,
Because that's in my head.
Yeah.
I needed that room, but I don't need the room.
but you don't need the room, right? If your head and your heart are in the same place that Carol's head and heart is at, then there's a connection. And I think I talked about that in something about like, you know, the holidays. At Christmas time is that time where everybody has that feeling of, you know, peace on earth and goodwill towards men. And you can feel a change. Why? Because people all over the world are thinking the same thoughts and feeling the same feelings. So you feel connected. And then after that day, what happens? The feeling goes away. Is it the day that makes it so special? Well, some people say, well, it's because it's the winter solstice. But it's not always the same day. You know, why does it happen? Because there are a huge number of souls, minds, energies, beings that are focused on the same thing, creating the same vibration. And it amplifies. Because it's synergistic. It's not 1 + 1. It's being multiplied, it's being exponentially grown. So with that realization, it's like, well, no, we don't. It's great to be in proximity. I don't think that will ever go away. Because the proximity just, again, amplifies that. But it's still possible to be on the same wavelength and get a very, very positive result. Look at the difference between, you know, the phone. You know, your daughter's in Colorado. Can you have a meaningful conversation with her on the phone? Yeah. Can you FaceTime and have a meaningful conversation?
Yes, we can.
Yes, as technology increases, the way that we interact, you know, it makes it, when we can see somebody, it makes us feel like we're more connected to them. So the thing is that it's not so important that we be in the same physical, right, we don't have to be in the same space, but we have to be in the same place. And the place is here and here. If we can do that, then there's never going to be loss of connection.
Did you ever see that children's book where the child goes off to school and what the mom does or the grandma or whatever is kisses their hand and tells them that, you know, that I'm putting this kiss in here, now close your hand, go to school, and you're always gonna have my love right here. Or even they'll put a little heart in their hand. That's the concept, that they're taking that love or that togetherness with them, and they get the idea that I don't have to be with my mom to feel connected to her.
Right.
The connection exists when we're apart.
No, I never saw it. That
No, it is.
No, I'll have to find it. My love goes with you. I don't know, I'll have to find it. I think I gave it to the kids. But anyway, that's the idea.
Well, and kids, I mean, I read a Christmas book that I had gotten, well, I saw it on Amazon and I thought it sounded good. The Legend of the Poinsettia, which is a Mexican folk tale about the night before Christmas. So I wanted to read it to my grandchildren, but they're in Pittsburgh. So I called and we had FaceTime and, you know, they're so used to technology, you know, as kids now, that they just sat there and grabbed attention while I read, I showed them the pictures, and it was fine, you know? So, things work.
Well, way before any technology, it was the spoken word, that went, even before people had books, it was the spoken word that spread ideas, that made people feel connected. Because like you look at Christianity, long after the figure of Christ was gone, those same thoughts continued to exist because people used the spoken word and then eventually the written word to pass those ideas along.
So, I think that, like I was saying earlier about complacency, that we get comfortable with things. We're comfortable with the way things are, you know. So, you know, I'm not good with technology.
To my line.
Yeah, I'm not good with technology. Well, you're not good with it because you just haven't spent time doing it. And for most people, the reason you don't spend time doing it is because you didn't really have to. And you were able to get by and get by okay on technology. It's like, for example here, my mom. Oh, I don't want one of them smartphones. You know, I'm not gonna use it, I'm not gonna use it, I'm not gonna use it. Well, my sister finally decided my mom needs to get a smartphone because my sister was getting a new phone and she had this old iPhone. I mean, not like, you know, iPhone 1, but, you know, a few years old. So it's like, okay, well, instead of trading my phone in, I'm gonna give my old phone to my mom because she's, you know, she needed a new phone. And now she's gonna have the ability to stay connected in a different way because she will be able to text. She will be able to do video chats. And, you know, so it's gonna be it's gonna open up, now it's gonna be a learning curve because she definitely is not technologically savvy. But I think once she starts getting into it, she's gonna see the plus side of what she, you know, it's gonna be hard, but it's gonna be worth it on the back end. But because, you know, and I'm not picking on you, Betty, by any stretch of imagination.
I tried, but
Yeah.
I do it, you know.
And this is where you have to annex, or not annex, you have to outsource.
Yeah, well, like, I tried to follow the instructions for the meditation, you know, I couldn't even get into that,
Well,
so.
and that's not your fault. Actually, it's not your fault.
Thank you.
It's the fact that Facebook app for iPads and iPhones doesn't
Okay,
let you do that.
okay,
Which is what I found out when I started doing some research.
Okay.
It's like, oh, there's a problem with that function, so that's gonna make me have to change the way I present that information.
How come I get one once in a while?
but still, will you be able to fix it or
I
not?
will have to do something different,
Okay,
because as long as you have an iPad, you're always gonna have problems, unless Apple or Facebook decide they really wanna fix that. And so I'm sure if you complained enough, Betty, they would listen to you. Because Betty Baker holds much power. So, but I want to talk about one of the things I want to talk about is about the idea about designing your year. And that does tie in some of the concepts in the Deutsch book. Yeah, that's the book that, one of the books, was the book that I started reading beginning of the year, and
Beginning of next week.
no, this year. And Carol saw it on one of my posts, that was the book that I was gonna be reading, and then they got excited about reading it, and they're like, can we read this? So, that was their decision that as a group, we're going to read, and it's a really good book. Once you get past the whole chapter on sexuality. Have you gotten to that
I
part?
haven't gotten to
Okay.
sexuality yet.
That's because Deutsch is a psychoanalyst,
Mhm.
so very heavily Freudian influence. So
Mhm.
he spent a whole lot of time talking about.
Okay. But it's really good up to the, I'm about 4 chapters in.
Mhm.
It's really good up to this point.
Yeah.
But I'm doing.
But and to piggyback on Carol, I think talking about words, the importance of words. The idea of, last year I talked about goal crushing as opposed to goal setting. Because, goal setting is like, you put this there.
Mhm.
As opposed to if you're thinking about crushing something, it's like you just want to completely obliterate it. And it creates a completely different mindset and emotion. It creates a different result. So we're thinking about designing your year. Okay. So I say design, you're gonna design something. What does that mean to you? And what are the images that pop in your head? Go, talk about yourself.
It's just that you can take everything that you want to do and put it into some kind of a hierarchy or pattern, or be creative with it.
And with a plan, you're always acting on it, or the intent is always acting on it instead of just sort of sitting there on a shelf, oh, I should probably get to that, but if you don't have a plan of action, how can you look at it?
And think of broader. What are the things that we design? What can you design? What can you
You
design?
can design everything,
Interior decorating.
Okay, interior decorating,
house,
design a house,
You can design a program to teach.
okay. Clothes, what else?
Sad, but all I keep thinking about is structuring my day.
So if you're an artist like Marilyn, you have a design for your next painting.
design a city.
The design is a picture of what you want.
But it also follows principles.
But it's sort of like an end result. You can see the end result clearly with the design.
But you have to be able to change it
Right.
along the way to suit what you might find isn't working.
Yeah, that's true. You can tailor that to you. That's true. It can be flexible.
So how many of you ever thought about designing your year or designing your life?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
not that way. Like that.
Okay. So what are the steps that you have to do that go on? Let's use, for example, interior design. So it combines sort of combines the house and the.
So you need a big picture. First, you have to know what you want it to look like,
Okay,
so you can start the design.
okay.
And then you have to get the pieces of it together and maybe rearrange your thought of the design.
The book that I shared with you guys, the Wishcraft book, she talks about taking what your end goal picture in your mind of what you want at the end, and then work backwards from that. And that's how I do it. have your goal, like a beautiful living room, and you ask yourself, can I have that today? The answer is no, because you obviously can't. There's a lot to do. But you break down, well, why can't I have a beautiful living room today? And you say, well, I need a new couch, and I need to repaint, and I need new drapes, and a new rug, or I need to refinish the floor, or I need to demo a wall. So you make your list of things there. The reason you can't have your beautiful new living room at the moment. And then you look at that list of things and you say, can I have any of these at this moment? No, why not? You break down each one of those. Why can't I demo the wall? Well, my mother-in-law's coming in 2 weeks, so I don't want it to be messy, and I'm having a new baby, and there's a kitten, and whatever. So you break it down more until you find the time when, and you break down all of your tasks until you find something smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, until there's something you can do right now,
Right.
which is I need to call a floor refinisher. That is something you could do right now to get you on the step. But when you write it down, you make your list, and you have it all in front of you, you can see at any moment what I can do right now. So you always have something to do, and you're always working towards your goal. And that's how,
That's the same way you design your life or your career.
yeah. But if you don't have that
You have to have
actionable
a place to
plan,
start.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at this, like, oh, I need to have this brand new room that, that I want, and you can get discouraged because like, oh my God, it's gonna be so much work. We have to demo a wall, and we can't afford a new rug.
And there's no sense even starting.
Right, but then you get discouraged. No, we're doing fine. She'll set it on one of those.
Here's some more napkins.
And that's,
Is that what you're talking
yeah,
about?
exactly. I was talking about, doing a coaching group, and the guy who runs that, he calls that the ladder principle. Like, you think about where you want to be, and that's the top step of the ladder. And you don't have a ladder that starts at the ground and ends at, it's just one step from here to there. It's always, they're rungs, and it's always going through that same process of, well, if this is what I want to do, what do I need to do to be able to do this? Well, I need to do this. Well, if I can't do this right now, then what do I need to be able to do this? And then you just keep adding steps. You subdivide until you get to that one actionable step. And you do that actionable step. And then you do the next one, you do the next one, you do the next one. So however you call it, I mean, this is, the arose by any other name. I mean, everybody's got a different way of describing it. But anybody who's successful consistently, and that's the key, because you can be successful, you can have a great life, you can have everything you want, but if there's no intention behind it, it's haphazard. It's luck. It's just pure dumb luck. And you have a good year, and then you have a completely shitty year. And even though we do go in cycles, but when you have a plan for it, at least, when you have an intention, you understand, for me, I understand that 2017 and 2018 had a lot of shitty moments in them. But they were all moments that were redirecting me to a different path that in 2019 is going to be better for me. And in 2019, I'm sure there's going to be some things that I would prefer not to have happen. That's the nature of the beast. But if I can always, going back to the Wayne Dyer thing, if I can always change the way I look at them and look at them as, what does this have to show me? What do I have to learn from this? As opposed to the woe is me, you're kind of being tossed by the winds. Then it creates a completely different scenario for you. So when we go back to the idea of designing, okay, so you have the idea, right? So that's kind of like the layout. So whether you're an architect or an interior designer, or you're designing a computer program, anything, when somebody designs something, it's always put in some version that can be seen. Always, always, always. If you're designing, like in the medical profession, if you're designing a treatment protocol, it's not a drawing, but it's written.
It's written,
It's something that's tangible.
right,
It-
something you can refer to.
Yeah, it's something that you can refer to before the physical manifestation, the full physical manifestation happens. You have to have something that you can look at and say, this is what it's gonna look like. This is what I intend for it to look like at the end. Now, like you were saying though, there are twists and turns that may occur along the way. But if you don't have a vision, then every twist and turn is more than likely going to take you
In the opposite direction.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to write it down. Then after you write it down, what's the next thing you do? Maureen's talking about, what do you do? You gotta break it down. You gotta come up with, what do I need to do to make this happen? And you keep breaking, you break it down, you break it down, and break it down, so you create a plan of action. And then once you create a plan of action, and this is where most people fall down,
You have to actually do
you
it.
gotta actually do it. It's like, I've got my goals written, I know exactly what I need to do.
But, you know, like Maureen said, if you break it down to a really basic element,
Yeah, like that one book you read about the tiny, like doing the 100 New Habits or whatever it's called, where you do something that's so small, it's like, you can't not do it.
ridiculous, yeah,
Yeah.
ridiculous.
We're still doing our here with everything.
Doing good. Could I get a Blizzard, please?
Blizzard Pops?
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Were you open with yours? Nope.
I don't know if any of you have ever watched South Park.
Lately, I can't believe we're still going.
It's awful.
Yeah. There's an
But
episode,
it's,
there's
it's awful, but it's well written.
the episode about the underpants gnomes. Okay, so the story of the underpants gnomes, there's a character, his name is Butters. Butters is just kind of like, Butters is this really just kind of dorky kid, okay? And Butters is not being able to get to sleep because every time he goes to sleep at night, someone steals his underpants. He wakes up in the morning, his underpants are gone. And so the rest of the kids decide they're gonna help him kind of figure out what's going on. And they discovered that his underpants were being stolen by gnomes. And they followed the gnomes, the underpant gnome, back to their gnome lair, where there were mounds and mounds of underpants. And so all sorts of madness ensues, and they finally are, talking to the gnomes. I was like, why are you doing this? Thank you, sir. Well, it's like, it's part of the plan. The business plan. And the gnome pulls out this big chart, and it's like, it's a 3-phase plan. Phase 1, collect underpants. Phase 2, the big question mark. Phase 3, profit. And they're like, well, what's phase 2? And they all go,
No action plan.
yeah. So it's like, okay, well, we know what we need to do this first phase, and we know it's gonna get us a profit, but and I think that's where a lot of us end up. We end up in the underpants gnome world. It's like, okay, read a book.
Yeah. Read a lot of books.
Read a lot of books.
Get smarter.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
Well, how do you translate that knowledge? How do you
Yeah.
capitalize it? Because just to make profit, just to gain from it, there has to be some way to monetize or capitalize what you're doing.
Right.
How do you do it? And that's where I think a lot of people fall down. So that's like one of the key points. So you have the vision, You have the action plan. You do the steps, and you have to do the steps consistently, and then you get the result that you want. Profit. Okay, so when we think about like the brain and how it works, because you know how much I love thinking about the brain and how it works or how it doesn't work sometimes. We have 3 things that are going on in there.
That's it?
Well, 3 categories of things.
Sorry.
Okay? Because there's one part that's missing that we didn't talk about. And that's what creates, so we think let me backtrack. Okay? So we have our conscious mind, right? This part, the conscious mind, right? That's the part that decides. That's the executive function, right? You decide something, you make a decision, and you can't take action. And you can't take action consistently if you don't decide to do it. Right? There's a difference between action and reflex, action and reaction. Okay? So action is deciding. This is what I want to do. Reaction or reflex is something different. So we have conscious decision, we have subconscious or unconscious, and then there's one other thing that's missing that some people will say it's part of the brain, but it's really not. So they have conscious, subconscious,
Super.
The ego,
Um,
might be done.
emotion.
the emotion.
Okay, so things can, and the emotion and the subconscious are linked. Okay, so what necessitates the desire to change? And I actually tipped it off by saying desire.
Yeah.
It's emotion.
Mhm.
Change is created by emotion, either positively or negatively. Okay, so an example of positive emotion would be, at some point you had decided to do Tai Chi. You don't know why, but you did it. And then maybe you only intended to do it for 6 weeks or 10 weeks back at that point. And then you found out, hey, I like this. I feel good when I do this. So what do you want to do then? You want to keep doing it, or you want to do more of it? So you find something that is giving you a good feeling, and so you want to do something to give you more of that good feeling. Or, for most of us, it's the converse. It's, I don't like this. I'm not comfortable. I'm not satisfied. I'm not fulfilled. You think about all the negative emotions. So we're not happy with our situation. We're either happy with our situation, so we want to do more of what's going to make us happy, or we're not happy with our situation, so we want to do something that will make us happy. So when we realize that, when we come to that point of realization of, I need to change something so that I can be happier, we make a conscious decision at that moment of, I gotta change. So we've shifted from emotional state to a conscious state. Decision, okay? Then creating an action plan. Is that conscious, subconscious, or emotional? Conscious, okay? So we've gone down a rung on the ladder, still conscious. Okay, so we do the action, we've got the action plan. We do the action. Still conscious, because you got to decide to do it. Until it becomes a routine, becomes part of your routine. So your morning routine is, I get up and I'm gonna get up every day, and my routine is gonna be, get up every day, and I'm gonna have my coffee, and then I'm gonna do an hour of Tai Chi, and then I'm going to, so you create this routine. Okay? Then, once you've done the routine enough, because routine is still conscious. right? Because you have to decide you're gonna do it. You do the routine enough, what does the routine become? It becomes a habit. And once it becomes a habit, then it's shifted into the subconscious realm, because you don't have to think about it, it just, it happens. So we went from emotional to conscious, conscious, conscious leading to subconscious, purely subconscious. And then what happens?
Then you're in flow.
It ends up changing the emotion.
It changes the emotion. So it goes back to the emotion. Because you're going, you got these habits, and then you're going, yeah, I like how this feels, or I don't like how this feels. So that's the cycle. It starts with emotion, it goes to conscious, to subconscious, back to emotion, to conscious, to subconscious, to emotion, and on and on and on and on. So you can't shortchange any one of those things. Because if you don't have the emotions, if you think about like designing your life, if you don't have an emotional attachment, commitment, desire, you're not gonna create change. And the stronger the emotion, either positively or negatively, the more likely you're gonna be able to be successful at whatever it is you're gonna do. Which the first step is just figuring out what the hell it is you wanna do. Then you make those decisions, and this is like where stuff like willpower comes in, because that's conscious. You make the decisions, wisdom, knowledge, you make those things, those are all these conscious things, until it can get to your subconscious, and then you'll start to cycle over and over again. So, and this is where coaching comes in, and that's where my part of what we're doing is that, you may have 99% of the skills, knowledge, ability to do everything you need to do. Let's say you're doing your house, and you can do the vision, you can do the layout, you can buy all the stuff, you can move all the stuff, but you gotta change wiring. You need an electrician.
We can learn how to wire.
Yeah, or you learn how to wire. But where do you learn how to wire? You gotta learn from, you've gotta borrow someone else.
YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But you have to borrow someone else's knowledge and experience. Because you can't really do it on your own. So that becomes then the cycle. Somewhere along that point, you have to have input.
Or you stagnate.
From outside yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can't know everything. Especially if you're trying to work on something that's bothering you. It's because there's something else you need to learn.
So, if we think about that then for, like, I'm not big anymore on New Year's resolutions, and I intentionally did not launch a beginning of the year, like, goal setting course, and there's a reason for that. One of the big reasons is everybody and their brother's doing it. Okay? Everybody's doing it to the beginning of the year. Why? Because that's when everybody does it. When do people really need that guidance?
Around July.
Middle of March.
Yeah, about 90 days out. Because that's when you get the big, and that's when people are like, I said I was gonna go to the gym every day, and I've gone 3 times in the past month. I give up. That's when at the beginning, you need direction on how to set your goals. But when the help is really needed is that 90 days out, when people are like, I'm nowhere close to where I wanna be, I give up.
And in the beginning, you've got excitement carrying you along, and just the newness of everything. And then after that wears off.
So that's where the plasticity concepts start to come in. Like when you start to think about how the brain works, why the brain works, because we're trying to bridge that gap between the conscious and the subconscious, understanding the mechanics of that, do you have to understand it? No, absolutely not. Right? Do you have to understand how your digestive system works to eat?
No. No.
You have to understand how your respiratory system works to breathe.
No.
No. But what happens when you do understand those things?
Stop doing stupid stuff. Help it.
Stop doing stupid stuff. You put yourself in optimal positions. If you know, well, hey, you know, if you eat this with this, you're going to have trouble digesting. Or if you do, you know, if you breathe this way instead of this way, you're going to affect your blood pressure. Okay? So you start to understand the mechanics, and it's easier to self-diagnose and self-correct. Don't self-medicate, Betty. So, understanding the mechanics then of the brain just allows us to be aware of the potential pitfalls and also to be aware of hacks, how to shortcut some things, how to avoid some potential problems. So with plasticity, you know, the great side of plasticity is that the brain is plastic; it can change. Right? And what's the most famous saying that they use in the world of neuroplasticity?
Wire it until you. Yeah,
The
go.
brain, the neurons that fire
Nerd,
together,
wire
fire
together.
together.
And there's another one.
Neurons that don't fire together, don't wire together.
Yeah.
Or, yes, you can teach an old dog.
And that's a big saying that we use, and it's something that we believe. You know, I'm old. I can't do that. You know, I'm an old dog.
Even young people say that.
Yeah.
This is the way I was trained.
Yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of thing.
And that's the positive side of plasticity is that you can develop new neural pathways. They can be strengthened through repetition until they are habits. The bad part is that as long as it's a habit, you're not going to be able to undo it until you make it not a
Right.
habit.
If you want to change it,
It has to be
you
conscious.
yeah.
You have to change how the neurons fire. So you have to create different associations with things, which again goes back to that whole thing with Wayne Dyer of you look at things differently, what you look at changes. And if you always look at things from the same perspective, you will always get the same results because you'll always take the same actions because you always have the same beliefs. You have to look at it differently, which creates a completely different neural pathway. And then the more you fire this pathway, the weaker this pathway gets. Because it's a neural bonding, the neural bonding factor is in limited supply in your brain. This is one of the coolest things. Like we talked about myelination. You create these, you create the bonding factor, the chemical, is what's connecting the neuron to neuron. Okay, so that's the pathway. Then the myelin sheath is what insulates it.
It goes around.
Yeah, so it goes around the neural connection. Okay. The bonding factor is limited. So you have a set amount. It's like, you know, I give you $100. You can allocate that $100 however you want, but all you have is $100. So this is why, like, with children.
That explains mommy brain. No, really. I mean, when I had Declan, I was just like, I can't remember anything else. But goodness, my reflexes got very fast, and I became very focused on what to do for a baby, because that's my focus. But then other stuff went away, and it's still gone.
So what happens though is that, yeah, absolutely.
You done finished with this?
That's why, you know, the neurons that fire together, wire together, the neurons that don't fire together, don't wire together. Is that, you know, if you've got 100 connections and you want to add a new one, something's got to go.
It doesn't necessarily have to go. It could go with
It
something
can go, yeah,
else.
it can pair with it.
And the myelin sheath will encapsulate.
Right, so
all of
it has to be chunked.
Right, right.
It has to be chunked.
So that frees up space in your brain as well.
Yeah.
So is it the
Consolidation.
myelin sheath that is in limited supply? It's the chemical in between?
Now, myelin does degrade over time. So, like the sheaths begin to degrade over time. That's why the repetition, even once you get something ingrained to a mastery level, that some level of repetition is still necessary to maintain that. But the important thing about the bonding factor is that you can't simply override something that's an ingrained, entrained process. You have to actually replace it. And this is why, you know, how I've talked to you guys about how when you feel confusion, that's the more confused you feel, the closer you are to the breakthrough, because you have thought here, intention here, and this is the way you've always thought about it, this is the way you've always done it, this is, you know, down here, and then you're trying to create this new one over here. And at first, if you really focus, you can get this one to happen, but as soon as you stop thinking, it go over to this one. And it kind of goes back and forth. So this one is starting to try and pull the bonding factor from this one. So it's like, okay, I'll take that. And then when you're not focused on it, Maureen takes us back. And then I go, no, I want this. No, I want this. 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 And it starts this tug of war. And when you start to feel like something's going to break, that's exactly what's going to happen. Something's going to break. Something's going to get one side or the other's going to win. And when that new habit or that new thought pattern, new belief wins, it will just take. And so that old pattern,
That's an epiphany, right?
can be,
Yeah, and in psychotherapy, it's sometimes called a flight of the romance. Because you finally break loose from the thing that was holding you back. You go the other way and you might do it real quickly. Now, when you say bonding factor, are you talking about neurotransmitters?
I don't think I'm not sure if it's considered a neurotransmitter.
Okay, 'cause I'm not familiar with
No, it's not like,
It's not-
it's not like,
that. It's not like serotonin.
not serotonin, no, it's,
Something else. Okay.
yeah. So, that, I mean, and that, I think that is where you understand, having an understanding of how it works and why it works, then helps you with the process of knowing that you're going to have that struggle, you're going to have that battle for supremacy. And you have to consciously guide your thought until it takes dominance of the old thought. And then,
Or you gather enough evidence to finally make it shift.
well, that becomes tricky because even with evidence is
I mean, enough evidence to finally make you believe. Not that, it's just not,
yeah.
not the amount of evidence, it's enough to convince you
Yeah.
to make the switch.
So that's where understanding the plasticity comes in, and that if you keep reinforcing it, then the more you reinforce it, then the stronger it gets. Which is then, that becomes the,
Is there anything else I can do for you? I don't want to coffee tea.
No, thank you.
What about Oxford? Flatbread?
Hey, does anybody want
I have
this?
some flatbread.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, great. Were we doing one challenge here?
Separate.
Separate? Not a problem.
No, Betty, yeah, these are so good.
So that becomes a dark side, is that as it becomes ingrained, as it becomes concrete, at some point, that belief, that thought, that action is no longer to serve you. So then you have to create a new one.
Well, why can't it continue to serve you? Not necessarily discontinue serving you, right?
It depends. You still need it.
That's what it
If
is.
you don't need it and you break the connection, why would you want it back?
Well, I'm just thinking if you incorporate healthy habits into your life.
Which
with
means
working-
getting rid of bad habits.
Yeah, but my thought process is on the healthy habit. Why would I need to change?
Because everything changes.
Even if you look at that in terms of an exercise plan, you can see that eventually, yes, that is a healthy habit, but it's gonna change as you get stronger. You'll have to reevaluate.
You either have to step it up or you have to step back. You have to change.
Okay,
And so there's some level of truth to it, you know, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always got. To a point. Because there's some things that are going to diminish in return. So, but if you believe something to be true, it's true. But if the environment changes to a degree where the relationship of your thought and your belief is contradictory to the laws of nature surrounding it, then it's no longer true. It's no longer beneficial. So, okay, so let's use it like you said, a physical exercise example. We have ideas about what healthy body fat is. Okay, so, but if you, sometimes you look at a body fat chart and it'll say, you know, men, athletic is, you know, 4 to 10%, and average is, or healthy is 10 to 20%, and you know, so it just gives these very general things. Then you look at other ones that'll say, well, yes, men 18 to 25, this is the range. Men, you know, in their 30s, it's different. Women in their 30s are different. Women in their 50s are different. You know, women 60 plus are different because the body actually needs more fat as we get older. So if your concept and your belief is that to be healthy, I have to have between 10 and 15% body fat, but the change in your age says that no, actually that's not enough. You have to change your belief.
so you're just saying that you should think concretely. It should be open.
You have to be plastic.
Always question everything, all the time, constantly.
So, you know, the positive side, our brain changes and can rewire and create new connections. The bad part is, yeah,
So what if you backslide? Does that mean you haven't changed it enough? Is that normal?
yes, yes.
And then you have to keep adding layers of resolve?
And sometimes it means you might have to come at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
Because what you've been doing, trying to change make the shift, didn't happen, so sort of step back.
It can actually be because it's not in alignment, actually, with your life, the way you're living your life, or whatever. That's the difficult part, maybe part of the reason why it's not happening.
Or you have some other emotional reason that's stopping you from doing that, so you have to focus on that, get rid of that, and then get back to
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I have a few theories on it, on why it happens. And fundamentally, to me, it's like when you think about like the neural pathways, like the analogy I always use, it's kind of like walking through the woods. So before a path is established, it's just weeds. And every time you walk that path, the weeds get worn down, they get stepped on, and if you keep walking that path every day, it's going to actually start to wear down. Like you'll be able to see the footsteps. There'll be a trench, and once you stop walking it, like the weeds will start to grow back up. This path, the new path gets clear, but there's still a little bit of evidence that path was there. And then all it takes sometimes is a reminder, or like we're talking about emotions, that if you're always thinking about it from this perspective, and then there's a slight emotional twist that reminds you of something else, you'll start to go back down the old path. So that's why I love the thing Joe Dispenza talks about. When you're functioning from emotions, you're living in the past, because emotions are reminders of past, like memories and emotions are from past events. Emotions are how you respond to those memories of past events. So if you're going from an emotional perspective, this is all about the past. Yeah. So particularly stress. So when stress or fear hit, it's usually related to some past experience. So you may be moving consciously forward, boom, 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 everything's going fine, and then something happens that throws you back to remind you something of your childhood, or remind you something of some other time in your life, and then suddenly you find yourself going back down that direction. And that neural groove, for lack of a better word, is still there underneath all of the stuff, and you just find yourself back on that old familiar. And that's like earlier when I was talking about complacency. So comfort and complacency have to do with the familiar. And sometimes we're much more prone to stick with something that's familiar, even though we know it's not the best thing for us. It's because you know what to expect. And even if it's not safe. That's why a lot of times people stay in abusive relationships.
It's just, no.
It's what you know. And yeah, I know he hits me, but I also know he loves me. And if I leave him, then I may not find anybody who loves me, because he's told me that I'm not lovable, even though he loves me. And then they find themselves unable to change, because the safety that accompanies the no is better than the uncertainty that comes with the unknown.
Until it's not.
So if you're having stress because you're reminded of something in the past, staying in the moment, what's the solution?
You gotta get back.
So staying mindfulness in the moment?
Yeah, you
And
gotta-
letting go of realizing that it's happening. It's oftentimes.
But sometimes that just, you go, yeah, exactly.
And then you just say, okay, that happened. And it's just like meditating. You let those thoughts, and then you keep going on what you're trying to do. The other thing, what you were saying about, were you calling it a setback?
Backsliding.
Backsliding, that also could be something that you need to reframe and not look at it as a backslide. Change the word. It's a challenge that you need to overcome in order to learn what you're trying to do. So backslides aren't necessarily a bad thing.
Right. I see what you're saying. Well, I remember the last time we met, I don't know if it was the last time, but we were in a small room. You were talking about changing a habit, and it has to do with how it makes you feel. So how is that different than an emotion. You know, changing something is going to make you feel good.
Well, it's the difference between making a conscious decision to move towards an emotion, which is, I need to change this so I can feel better. That's saying, that's conscious, right? I need to do this, that's making a conscious decision in order to feel. As opposed to, I feel this way, so I'm gonna do this. That's your emotion driving your conscious decision.
Okay.
I feel afraid, so I'm not gonna do this. So, you know,
Okay.
I feel afraid, so, and for myself, okay, she says, yeah, I feel afraid that I'm not gonna be able to pay my bills, so I can't close the center.
Oh, so I'm not sure if that,
Or
if it's all 20 on
I'm
there.
gonna close the
So
center,
check it, and if
even
it's
though
not, I'll give you
I
that.
know I'm potentially gonna be afraid that I may not be able to pay the bills.
In other words,
You
I'm
know,
not sure if I
I'm not letting that fear change my habit, because I know that if I do the action, that I either will or I
Oh, my
won't.
gosh.
I'll either be able to pay my
I
bills or
didn't
won't be able to pay
realize
my
there
bills.
was, sure, I didn't know there
But
was.
if I say,
That
if I go
happens
by
all
just
the
the
time, because
fear,
people forget to use them.
then
Yeah,
I'm never
I
find
I
out.
didn't know I just got this one,
And
that
I'm gonna
would be
move forward,
okay.
I'm
Even
always gonna
better.
stop where I'm at. Good heart.
I'm just sorry, I've been carrying around, and I didn't know they had an it expired in January of 18.
Betty,
I didn't know they had.
I didn't know they had an expiration.
Most gift cards don't
I know,
expire.
and they don't tell you that, and
should
it's in such fine print.
No, you should talk to the manager, I bet they'd let you still use it. Because when I've had, gift cards expired before that I haven't used, I got it swapped for one that's current. So you should go talk.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never heard of them
I
expiring.
never did
mine
either.
doesn't.
They used to years ago, I mean, all gift
Yeah.
cards.
Sure.
Too
Yeah,
bad.
I didn't- I didn't-
Actually, I think there's a law in Pennsylvania that says that you can't
Oh,
do
yeah.
that.
I thought so too.
That they're,
Yeah.
so, anyway, that's, does that make a little sense?
Yes, it does.
So if you are a person that is not used to taking risks, that's just, see, so you're gonna have to build pathways to do
Yeah,
that,
and
and
they
maybe
do
you
it by
have to
doing
start
a
small.
tiny little risk that feels okay,
Maybe
that's
that's-
a little bit beyond your comfort level, and once you
Yeah.
do that, you're like, oh my god, I did that, what can I do now? Like,
Yeah, actually, in the Deutsch book, uh, in the chapter on the brain unlocked, that's chapter 6.
Yep.
He's talking about research and therapies that were being done for people with OCD. And finding that the typical therapies of like, okay, well, you have to, you know, face your fear and, you know, all this sort of stuff that actually doesn't work particularly well with people, particularly when they have OCD.
So it just makes it worse?
Because what it does is it becomes about the content. And that if you focus on the content, then you keep getting the content. So it's like the, you know, what you think about grows.
Right.
So why you don't want to think about, you know, like if you want to lose weight, you don't think, oh, I need to lose weight. You know, I'm so overweight, I'm so fat, or I'm so out of shape, I gotta get in shape, I gotta get in shape. So when you start thinking about the negative, then you just reinforce the negative. You get more of the negative thought. So you have to flip the script. So I'm trying to find the exact thing. So it's a change the channel. Okay, so it's like it's on page 173. It talks about gear shifting. Like with obsessive compulsion, the more you do it, the more you want to do it. The less you do it, the less you want to do it. Schwartz has found it essential to understand that it's not what you feel while applying techniques counts, it's what you do. The struggle is not making the feeling go away. The struggle is not to give into the feeling. He calls it changing the channel. So, like in the case of fear. Okay, so unless you're someone,
Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed everything.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure we'll see you soon.
All right. Unless you're somebody who's got like fear of everything, yeah, agoraphobia, acrophobia, phobia, fear of fears. There's something that you don't have fear of. So when you feel fear, what the gear shifting technique would be, then you focus on, you recognize that you're feeling fear, and you consciously shift your attention, and particularly trying to do an action that you're not fearful of. So because there are like three parts of the brain that are being, it's like the underhand known thing. So there's the first two parts, if they stay in the on position, then you never get to that last part, which is the release. So fear and anxiety are normal and natural, but if you never get to that resolution point, then that's where it becomes detrimental. So the idea is to, instead of trying to let it go through its manual thing like, okay, I'm afraid of, I'm concerned that this is going to happen, and you go through this other mental little gymnastics thing, and then finally like, okay, well, everything's cool, and you go to the resolution. They get stuck. So you have to manually go in and put your brain into that position where it's no longer dealing with fear or anxiety or obsession. So the only way that you can't do it based on, so if it's fear of meeting people, you can't just go out and meet people or think, well, I just, I've got to go out and meet people, because then you just keep feeding the fears. That's the content. So the way to do the therapy would be, when you have that feeling, maybe you feel very confident, let's say, I don't know, something stupid. You feel confident tap dancing. You're not afraid to do that. So every time you get that feeling like, well, I'm afraid to go talk in public, then you go in the bathroom and you tap dance, and you don't have that fear. Your brain has shifted into that release state, and then
it makes new associations too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's in that chapter, in chapter 6. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go.
All right, thank you, Betty.
Katie will wonder what happened to me.
Oh,
That's
she
right.
will definitely wonder what happened to you. So I think I'm at the Friendship Center on Monday. Are you coming Monday by any chance?
If I get up early enough to get ready,
Yeah.
I'll come. That's at 10.
It's at 10, yeah.
Okay, I'll try to come.
Okay, good.
It's nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too.
Good to see you, Betty.
And you too. Take care.
Give Sadie a big kiss for me. So Karen, does that make a little sense?
It does, actually. Can't wait to get into this program. Yeah, it does.
All right, I'm gonna close this puppy down.